how do you improvise without making mistakes? Well, solos, it's easier if you know exactly what to play, then you can practice it a lot of times, a composed solo. But what about when you're improvising? You're supposed to be creative in the moment, and that's gonna produce some mistakes, some trial and errors, right? But no, not necessarily, because we can actually start playing without mistakes right away in no time. Because you have this zone, you have these things that you know. And in the core of this circle that I'm depicting here with my fingers, you will find all the things that you know so well that there's absolutely no reason to make a mistake. It's like, can you say the word the? Right? What are the chances that you're going to make a mistake saying the word the? Almost zero, right? Unless something happens, something unusual happens. But those are all in here. It might be the first position minor pentatonic. It might be, this bend, right? Whatever it is, you got some skills in here, stuff you can do, stuff you can improvise with and play around with while making zero mistakes. We all have them. Whether it is one note with a downstroke and some vibrato, we all have them. The question is, how big is this little circle inside? And then when we start improvising over a jam track, and we're having fun and we're at home and nobody's listening to us except for ourselves, then we're not just using that little zone. We're going out here. And the next level here is things that you can do when you feel like it. Things you can use and utilize and sound good with when you're not challenged in any way. So there's no audience now. You're not nervous. You're not in performance mode where I have to play something cool, otherwise, people will reject me and I'll be thrown out of the band, whatever, right? Those are all the things that are out here. So the core circle, you can't make mistakes, man. You're so good at this. This next, you almost make no mistakes when there's nobody watching or listening. And then there's this circle. We can almost not make mistakes here when we're practicing. And people play all of it when they practice over jam tracks. I did too. But when there's an audience where you have some kind of stress on you, you can't ever play this in the third, level of the circle. Those are the skills that disappear completely once you're on stage. And then half of the next zone disappears completely when you're on stage. And then you're basically left with half of zone number 2 and then the core. See, what you do in order to not make mistakes when you improvise is that you stay within this zone. Then when you practice improvising without making mistakes, you stay within this zone and then you push it a little bit. That's the trick. Because we're used to playing all of this and we have no control over what is actually in this inner zone and what is out here when we practice, because we just play all of it. And we make mistakes and we don't care because nobody's listening. What you need to do is you need to create a practice regimen, a practice method where you're playing over jam tracks, but you're not making mistakes. You're moving within this zone. So everything you play becomes a little bit simplified, you could say. But that's where you start. You start by finding a foothold in a zone where you don't have to make mistakes all the time. By you making zero mistakes. Just imagine you have a gun to your head and the guy's going to pull the trigger if you make a single mistake. That's how you should solo, and I really mean it. You stay frantically within the zone of absolute control. Then, when you have found your foothold right there, you start pushing. When you then practice the first level, find your foothold where you don't have to make any mistakes. That might be super simple what you're playing suddenly, right? Might be a little bit boring too. But then you start playing and then you push it just a little bit. And then the whole practice routine of having that jam track in the background becomes, just pushing it just a little bit. And then once you've expanded your zone a little bit with some things that you can play, but and you have a heightened sense of awareness and focus because you don't want to make mistakes with that, then you play and you play and you play. You improvise and you improvise and you improvise. And pretty soon, what's in this expanded inner zone now becomes your inner zone. Voila! This is having focus when you practice improvising. And then you stay there. You improvise and now you're not making any mistakes. Now you need a little bit of a challenge. So you start expanding that zone just a little bit. Remember, every time you go outside of it, it's a whole circle, right? So it's pretty big. Just a little millimeter or two or a tenth of an inch is a big area because it's all the way around. And then you practice there, right? For an entire day, for 2 days, for a week, just expanding it just a little bit. then pretty soon this becomes... So what is it that you actually do? That's hard to explain specifically because I don't know. I can't categorize the things you have in your fingers, in your head when you improvise. But you need to find that foothold where you could have a gun to your head. You don't care because you got that jam track in the background and you're not making any mistakes, man. So you're only using techniques that you fully master, or parts of techniques that you fully master. You're only using things that you really have under control, and then you try to expand. Stay with that expansion. Don't go out and, I don't know what I'm doing. Just, push it a little bit, and then gradually you become better and better, and that's how to expand your inner zone until you practice like that for 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 3 months, 6 months sometimes, and then you just really have an expanded zone, and it's unrecognizable what you do now, because all of this is in your inner zone now, and then there's an even bigger zone outside of it. That's the way to go about it. Hope that makes sense. Hope you can use this. See you in another video.